when we think about being a superwoman, the biggest thing is being able to say no and really set boundaries and stick to boundaries. And so those are saying no is no is nothing but a two-letter word. You don't even have to make it a word. You can just shake your head. You don't even have to open your mouth, just shake your head. And you don't really have to give an explanation as to why you're saying no. Just say no and let it go. Now, I recognize some people just can't say no without giving an excuse. But the thing is, you don't have to. You just have to get comfortable with saying no. And also, with getting comfortable with saying no, you have to get comfortable with your boundaries. If you don't know what your boundaries are, then you can't expect other people to really follow your boundaries and respect your boundaries. You really have to know what your boundaries are. Your boundaries doesn't necessarily always have to be no, it could be setting aside some sacred time for you that you don't allow anybody to come into the space, to come into that area, to come into your sacred time for yourself. So, the example that I gave for you, like the friend calling me to cook a cake, I gave up some sacred time of my own to be able to go and do something for her. And it felt good. Everybody loved Marci's cooking, but it was still at the expense of my health. So you have to be mindful about what you're saying yes to. And if you're saying yes to something else, then you're saying no to yourself. And there is only one you for this time to go around in this lifetime. And so, how can you show compassion to yourself and love yourself more and more to be able to give your best? And it sounds like a cliche, um, you know. Love on yourself, self-care for yourself, so you can always provide the best for others. But believe me, there's really a lot to it. Um, During that 5-year span when I was losing my hair, didn't know why. My company was going through acquisition where we were going to be bought out by another company and we were going to be downsized. That meant that I could potentially lose my job. I had an uncle and an aunt that passed 2 days apart from each other. They both had cancer. She died Wednesday. He died on Friday. They left me the executor of their estate. They had no kids. They had my dad's generation was their nephews and nieces. It was it was an interesting time. People can get mean, even they might be kinfolk, but people can get mean when it comes to money. And so these were all people that I looked up to. And I was completely amazed and floored at what was coming back at me. And I was absorbing that negative energy, and my hair was just still coming out. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't know what's going on, but I never knew that it was an actual disease. Thought maybe alopecia, but that wasn't it. It was an actual disease that I had. And dealing with that, dealing with a teenage son, moving in the midst of all this. And so there's a lot that we take on, and we just don't recognize soon enough that it's really impacting our health. So I've given you all a lot in probably 15 minutes. So I really want to hear from you. What do you feel is your biggest area or obstacle that you have to get over as it relates to being a superwoman?
There's a great question in the chat, Marci.
Okay.
Kayla, do you want to ask or do you want us to ask for you?
Oh, I can absolutely ask.
Awesome.
So basically my question is like, so I understand like saying no and not needing to provide an explanation, but
Mhm.
I have a lot of people in my life where I say, oh no, I can't do that or what have you. And they're like, well, why? So how do you go about like handling that in those situations? Because I always then feel really guilty and
Let me
like I
ask you.
do have to provide an explanation.
Well, you really don't. You honestly really don't. You don't have to provide an explanation, but I understand that people will, and you also have to know that people will try to guilt you into saying yes. And
Yeah.
so when they ask you why and you tell them why, they will come up with reasons on how to handle the why so you can give them a yes.
Yeah.
And so you can just say it's not a good time for me right now. You know, there's, you know, this space or this time is sacred for me, and I want to use it on me. And there's nothing that they can tell you otherwise. It's going to change how you want to use that time for you. So you still have to be comfortable with saying no, and you have to be comfortable with turning it down and being questioned why. And if you don't want to answer why, you don't have to. You really don't have to. It is your time, your body, your space.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, but you got to get comfortable with it. And that's really a lot of I guess that's where kind of the, things break down of you being comfortable with saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I've done it too. I had yeah, I've done it too. My pastor came to me and asked me would I chair homecoming committee in 2017. It was the same year that my sister got sick. And when he asked me, my gut was like, no, that's just not for me. I really don't want to do it. Oh, you did it last year. You can do it again. I was like, no, I really don't want to. And he was like, well, just think about it. And so I was like, well, I'll think about it, but I don't feel like I'm going to change. And honestly, I didn't. But I never went back and told him no. And that was a huge lesson for me, because what happened is my sister got sick, was in ICU for 53 days. She passed away in September, and homecoming was October, and I had done nothing for it. Absolutely nothing. And I learned my lesson then. I should have followed my gut, and I should have held my ground. No, it's just not a good time. I can't explain to you why I'm feeling like this is not good for me, but I just know it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And be comfortable with it. And you can best believe me, since 2017, if I didn't feel like doing something, I don't do it.
I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was awesome.